Welcome to the 1856 Smyrna Methodist Church. Come on in, I'll show you around. So in the years preceding 1856, there was a Union Church in the Center Hill area. The Baptists met on the first Sunday, the Methodist on the second or third, and other groups in between. But one Sunday, they were having a revival, and the minister who came in alluded to the fact that he didn't believe that the Methodists were going to see heaven. Well, this didn't sit very well with the Methodists, and so the guy in charge of the group said, "Methodists, meet me at the north door after services." So they talked, and one of the guys said, "Methodist, I believe it is time to swarm," which was talk then for, we need to have our own church. And so in the spring of 56, they acquired the land that Smyrna now sits on, and they did this on purpose, as at the time it was halfway between Searcy and Joy. So they landed in the Smyrna community, and they built this church with the timber that was already here. And we know this because we have had it scientifically tested with a tree stump that is underneath the church. We didn't know it was there until the early 2000s when we were working on the building and we had to raise it up as if to move it to work on the hand-hewn logs that were rotten underneath. So that was a special treasure to find. So here we are so many years later, and our church still stands. It is owned by the city of Searcy. It was given to Searcy by the Methodist organization in the late 1990s. The Methodist organization, the Methodist Church worshiped here from 1856 until 1973. At that time, they then leased it out to independent groups, and they held services here until the late 90s. And now it is available for venue rental, weddings, parties, that kind of thing. Smyrna has no running water, barely any electricity, of course no bathrooms. And that's part of what makes it so special, is that it is very authentic right now. The city of Searcy recently approved money for painting the exterior front doors, and as well as the interior baseboards. And hopefully in the future as well, we will see a handicap ramp along the back and many other things to keep the church going as well as it can for the next few decades. We would love to see insulation blowed into the walls and HVAC added in the most discreet way possible. The White County Historical Society became involved in the early 2000s when we realized the shape that Smyrna was in. And so Bill Leach and Eddie Best set out to get a grant and to raise matching funds so Smyrna could get a facelift. And they did just that. The Arkansas Historic Preservation Program gave a grant for around $60,000, and the other $40,000 was raised through selling windows and selling pews. Now, they weren't really sold, but that meant you got a plaque by the window or a plaque on the pew. And many times it was the purchasers of these things were people who had ancestors who had gone to church here, and the place really meant a lot to them. That said, when you get a grant from AHPP, you give permission for them to have a historical easement, which means this building can never be moved, torn down, and the owner is supposed to keep it in good repair. So it's also so special because it is built and it sits in the Smyrna community as it was intended to so many years ago. We'll never know how many celebrations and sad times have happened here. In the original construction of the church, there was a door at this side that was flanked by 2 windows. And we hope to reopen the door and the windows. Also, the stage that we're on right now was added sometime later. We know the church was built in 1856, and we're pretty sure of a remodel in 1882. And the remodel changed the configuration of the church building from its original. So also in the future, we're going to take out this stage, open all this up, and then possibly move the configuration of the pews, because we believe they would have been more diagonal and toward each other, as that is witnessed in other old churches. If you look up, you can see where the stovepipe was, and so that would make the stove in the middle of the building for warmth. And it has 6 9/9 windows, and that is important because these window panes would have to been ordered. They would have been shipped to the White Little Red River and then picked up on a wagon or buggy and then brought down here. And many of these panes are still very old, so we're really proud of our windows. The pews are old pews. They are not original to the church, but they were refinished by the Arkansas prison system several years ago. It is possible, and we believe, that this bench right here is the only original furnishing left in here. It does have the old nails in it. If you look up and you see these 3 ropes going side to side, those are literally to help hold it together. And you'll see that in other places such as Old Washington State Park, which is down by Hope. That adds added support to buildings of this age. When the contractor was working on the building years ago, and we had to lift it up due to the rot of the hand-hewn beams that were then probably 150 years old, we almost lost this wall over here. And you can see that the wall is not as straight as the rest of the building, but luckily the contractor had it braced. If he had not had it braced, then we could have lost the whole church. Because if one wall would have fallen, of course the whole thing would have fallen down. So we are very grateful that he thought ahead of time for that. So we've spent over $100,000 so far on this project. We are not done, but it is rentable. For $150, you can call the Carmichael Center in Searcy, and they will give it to you for a few hours. There's been some cute weddings held here. Of course, Smyrna is a fair weathered friend. It is super cold in here in the winter and kind of miserable in the summer. I would say it gets colder more than hotter in here. But when you open these huge windows, you get a good breeze coming through, especially if you open those back doors as well. And then of course someday we'll have these back open. And so that'll be a great available breeze coming through all the sides of the building. Starting tomorrow, certified painters will be here to start working on the exterior paint, to scrape and to then paint in the next coming days. And then soon you'll see a new set of front doors that will be more secure and look better. And then of course we're going to do the baseboards in the next few weeks too. There's a story about the Armstrong family, and their son had gone to war in the early 1860s, and they didn't know if he was dead or alive. And at the close of a church service, they see him walking up the path to the church. It is said that his mother was so happy to see him that she stepped over the pew in her long dress to get outside to greet him. In the original construction, as I mentioned before, there was a door and 2 windows on the side over here. Also, there was a door on this side, and you can kind of see how this window was framed differently than the others. And we went ahead and just left it like it was originally, because when they walled this in to be a window instead of a door, this is how it happened. Nothing was totally redone because of it. It was just simply just patched over. So that gives you an idea of what perhaps the front door would have been. And at that time, Highway 36 and now Jayberg Lane, I don't know what they were called at the time, this was a very busy intersection for that era. And so everybody would have known about this church and where it was. The cemetery is separate. It is a historic cemetery. It is still active, and it is owned by a cemetery association. There's also a cemetery out in the woods to the right of this cemetery, and some volunteers and the city, they have been working to clear that to make it walkable, and now it's in much better condition than it was this time last year. We do have limited electricity here at Smyrna by what means of these outlets on this pole. So that's good if you have some kind of little something you need to set up out here, or you can run an extension cord through the window. That doesn't look too great, but in a bind, you know. We don't allow any kind of fire around the building, whether it's inside or out. And that includes, you know, candles, space heaters, none of that. But you can have, you know, some pretty stuff going on with electric lights and electric battery-powered candles, like we do when we decorate the church for the Cersei holiday of lights. And you can see how badly it needs painted. So we're really looking forward to that. The last time it was painted was in 2009, we do believe. And it looks spectacular. So hopefully in the next few weeks we're going to see a different looking church. And it's a Knox box for the fire department, and you can see this little path through here, and that is where the electricity has been ran to the building. We don't have any guts in the box right now because there's just no need to, but someday we sure will. Years ago, a teacher association, I believe a retired teacher association, they raised money to have this plaque put out here. And we'll go over here and see what this is. Smyrna Methodist Church, organized 1856, dedicated 1857. First pastor was John H. Mann. Trustees, Jacob Armstrong, T.B. King, Joseph Fortner, and W.C. Petty. And sometimes you'll still come across these kind of names in this area, or in Cersei or White County. The Armstrongs had a resort called Armstrong Springs, which was later owned by Morris School, and now owned by a church group not too far from here. And Armstrong Springs was a kind of a health resort for the time, when the springs would cure you from all ailments, and people would come from far away. There was a hotel or two there. So that was going on, you know, even after Smyrna was built. In my future dreams, I have thoughts of maybe over here someday there being a pavilion, maybe a little catering kitchen, bathrooms, to make this more rentable. And I believe more people could enjoy it if it could be used all year round. Our earliest picture of Smyrna is from the Dr. Grammer scrapbook that was donated to the Historical Society. And in that 1915 scrapbook, it shows Smyrna looking a lot like it does right now. And that is the picture we base the restoration from. It did show the belfry, but when we got to the building in the 1990s, early 2000s, the belfry was not there, nor did anybody really remember it. So at some point, it came down. We don't know what happened with the original bell either, but someone donated this bell, and it looks right up there. It does ring, and sometimes it is rung for weddings and such. And we also have school groups that come out here on field trips, as this is the oldest documented church building in Arkansas. And you know, we know that because we dated the annual rings on the stump we found underneath the building. It also has that intricate work of what looks like flowers above the vestibule, and the cutouts of little shamrocks. And those were also recut out and put up there to go with what was there previously. We found some things that were there a long time ago that were either under the building or slid into the wall, and that's what we know what it originally looked like, or at least the 1882 remodel.